everyone, and welcome. I'm so glad you're here to join us as we take a deep dive into letting go of all those things that might be, holding us back from becoming our best selves.
It's really more common than you think.
Right. There's so many little things, or sometimes big things, that we just hang on to.
Yeah.
So today, we're going to be looking at an episode from the Growth Mindset podcast. It's called Letting Go, 12 Things Holding You Back from Your Best Self.
Okay.
And they actually break it down into 12 very specific obstacles to let go of.
Nice.
Think of it as like spring cleaning, but for your mind.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Spring cleaning for the mind.
Yeah.
That's good.
All right, so the first thing they talk about, and I think this is something we can all relate to, it's looking for excuses. We all do it.
Yeah.
But why do we even make excuses in the first place?
I think, a lot of times it comes down to fear.
Fear, really?
Yeah, fear of failing, maybe fear of judgment, or even sometimes fear of success.
Oh.
It's kind of wild. We create these kind of elaborate stories, in our heads to protect ourselves.
Totally.
But then they end up trapping us, and we get stuck in this cycle of just not taking any action.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I've definitely done that. Use excuses to avoid things that just scare me.
Yeah.
So, okay, if excuses are really rooted in fear, how do we overcome that fear and break free?
Well, I think the biggest thing is shifting our perspective. Like, instead of focusing on why we can't do something, what if we asked ourselves, what's one little step I can take to make it possible?
Okay.
Even just a tiny action can make a huge difference.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right, so the next obstacle, and this one I think is something that I struggle with a lot, is negative self-talk. It's like having that inner critic that's always whispering doubts and criticisms in your ear.
Yeah.
Where does that even come from?
Well, a lot of times it's, it can be traced back to early experiences. Like maybe we were criticized a lot as kids, or we sort of absorbed these societal expectations that we never felt we quite measured up to.
Right.
And over time, these kind of external voices become our own internal critic.
It's great. I never thought about it that way.
It's true.
So if our negative self-talk is rooted in those deep-seated beliefs, how do we even begin to change it?
Well, one of the things I found to be super helpful are affirmations.
Affirmations, yeah.
But not just any affirmations. They have to be really specific and realistic and align with what you believe in, your values.
Total.
And I think it's about making a conscious effort to replace those negative thoughts with ones that are more positive and empowering and more supportive.
You know what, though? I have to be honest. Sometimes when I try affirmations, they feel so cheesy. Like, I don't even believe what I'm saying. Is there any way to make them feel more authentic, to actually feel like I mean them?
Yeah, no, I get that. I think a lot of people feel that way. I've heard it can be helpful to frame them as kind of I am becoming statements rather than I am statements.
I am becoming. Okay.
So like, for example, instead of saying I am confident, maybe you say I am becoming more confident every day.
Okay.
And that way you're acknowledging where you're at right now, but you're still setting a really positive intention for growth.
Oh, that's good. That's really helpful. I like that a lot. Okay, so the third thing they talk about in this podcast episode is fear of failure. It's like a universal human experience, right? It can hold us back from taking risks or from going after the things we really want. Why are we so afraid of failing?
That's a big question. I think a lot of it is tied to like our sense of self-worth.
Really?
Like we tie our value as people to our outcomes.
Oh, okay.
So when we fail at something, we feel like we ourselves are a failure.
Oh.
And that can be really tough, especially if maybe we grew up in an environment where mistakes were like punished or something.
Wow. Right.
Yeah.
And I've noticed for me, when I'm afraid to fail, I just put things off,
Yeah.
Procrastinate. I just avoid it altogether.
Yeah, procrastination it's a total defense mechanism.
Oh, really?
It's against that potential pain of failure. But the ironic thing is, it usually ends up creating more stress and anxiety in the long run.
It's so true. So if our fear of failure is really tied to our sense of self-worth, how do we overcome that?
Well, I think one really powerful way is to redefine what failure actually means.
Okay.
So instead of seeing it as like a personal reflection of our value as people, what if we looked at it as valuable feedback?
Oh, okay.
And then ask ourselves, what can I learn from this experience? How can I grow from this? And maybe what adjustments can I make moving forward? And, having this growth mindset can totally transform failure from something scary into a stepping stone.
That is so powerful.
That's a big shift.
I love that. Okay, so the fourth obstacle they talk about in this episode is destructive relationships.
Ooh.
And I think this one can be really hard to talk about because relationships are so complex. But how do we know if a relationship is actually harmful to our personal growth?
That's a good question. One thing to look at is how you feel after spending time with someone. Like, do you feel energized and supported, or do you feel like drained and maybe even kind of belittled or manipulated?
Okay.
I think trusting your intuition is really important here.
Yeah, your gut feeling.
Usually it's spot on.
Yeah, that's so true. I've definitely had relationships where I felt like I was walking on eggshells all the time. It can be so hard to let go of those relationships, though, especially when it's, family or close friends.
It's really hard. Letting go of any relationship is tough, no matter what kind it is. But it's so important to remember that we all deserve to be treated with respect and kindness.
Yes.
And setting boundaries is really important, even with our loved ones. It protects our well-being.
That makes sense. It's about putting our own mental and emotional health first, even if it means distancing ourselves from people who aren't good for us.
Exactly.
It's a tough step, but sometimes it's necessary. And you know what? This actually leads perfectly into the next obstacle, which is gossiping.
Ooh, yeah.
It might seem harmless, but I think we all know deep down that it's not always the best use of our energy.
No, it's not. And it can definitely hold us back. It keeps our focus on negativity and drama.
Right.
And it prevents us from focusing on our own goals and, what we want to achieve. I kind of think of it like junk food for the mind. It's like momentarily satisfying, but ultimately it's just empty.
Yeah.
And it leaves you feeling kind of gross.
Okay, I'm totally guilty of this.
Me too. It's so easy to get caught up in it.
It is. It's easy to get sucked into those conversations.
Yeah.
But I have noticed that after I've been gossiping, I feel kind of bad about myself.
Right.
Kind of deflated.
Exactly. It reinforces those negative thought patterns.
Oh.
And it can even make you feel guilty or ashamed.
Wow. Okay, so what's the antidote? How do we escape the gossip trap?
Well, I think it's about making a conscious effort to focus on more positive things and conversations that are actually constructive. And when you feel that urge to gossip, just try to redirect the conversation to something more uplifting.
Okay.
Or just excuse yourself politely. Your energy is precious.
It is. It is so true. Okay, number 6 on the list of obstacles is toxic habits. I think we all have them.
Oh, we do.
They're those patterns of behavior that we know aren't good for us, but we keep doing them anyway. Why are they so hard to break?
It's fascinating, actually. Habits, whether they're good or bad, are like these ingrained pathways in our brains.
Really?
And they operate on autopilot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it actually saves us mental energy.
Oh, okay.
So even when we consciously know, like, okay, this habit is not good for me, our brains are actually wired to keep doing it.
Oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense. So it's like our brains are fighting against us.
Kind of, yeah.
No wonder it feels so hard to change. Okay, so if our brains are like hardwired for these habits, how can we possibly break free?
Well, it takes a lot of patience, that's for sure. And you got to be strategic about it. The biggest thing is to not try to change everything at once.
Okay, start small.
Exactly. Like maybe pick one specific habit that you want to work on and then break it down into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay.
And be patient with yourself.
Yeah. I've noticed that when I try to break a habit, sometimes I slip up. And then I feel like I'm failing.
Oh.
Is that normal?
Oh, totally normal. Slip-ups are going to happen.
Yeah.
It's part of the process. Don't beat yourself up about it.
Okay.
Instead, look at it as like, okay, what can I learn from this? What triggered the slip-up? And what can I do differently next time? Being kind to yourself is really important. It helps you stay motivated.
That's so true. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so the 7th obstacle they talk about is procrastination.
Oh, yeah, we all know that one.
And I think this one's a struggle for a lot of people. Why do we put things off even when we know it's just going to make us more stressed later?
I think procrastination is often driven by perfectionism.
Oh, interesting.
We have this idea in our heads of how things should be done, this perfect vision.
Right.
And if we don't think we can achieve that, we just avoid the whole thing altogether.
Oh, wow.
It's a way of protecting ourselves, from potential judgment or criticism.
Yeah, and I have definitely noticed that for me, I procrastinate more when I'm feeling really overwhelmed or unsure of myself.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So, if perfectionism is fueling our procrastination, how do we let go of that need to be perfect and actually get things done?
Well, I think the key is to focus on progress over perfection.
Okay.
Remember, done is better than perfect, right?
Yes.
Break down those big tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks. And then celebrate every step you take, no matter how small it seems.
I love that.
Yeah.
That makes it feel less daunting.
Totally.
Okay, so obstacle number 8 is self-doubt. And this one, I think, is a constant companion for a lot of us.
Yes, definitely. It's like that nagging voice in the back of your head. Why is it so hard to quiet that inner critic and really believe in ourselves?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to a lack of self-awareness.
Oh, interesting.
We might not have fully explored our strengths or our talents or our accomplishments.
Okay.
So we end up operating from this place of like insecurity.
So it's not just about building confidence. It's about actually getting to know ourselves better.
Yeah, exactly.
But how do we do that? How do we become more self-aware?
You know, I've found that journaling can be a really powerful tool for self-discovery.
Journaling, okay.
Yeah, just take some time each day to reflect on your experiences and really identify your strengths and celebrate your wins no matter how small they are.
Okay.
Doing this consistently can really help you develop a more accurate and compassionate view of yourself. I like that. You know, I've tried journaling in the past, but I often end up focusing on my mistakes and my shortcomings.
Yeah.
How do I shift that focus to be more positive and empowering?
That's a great question. I've heard that it can be helpful to kind of reframe your journal entries. Like, instead of thinking of them as failures, think of them as lessons learned.
Okay.
So instead of dwelling on what went wrong,
Yeah.
ask yourself, what did I learn from this experience? And how can I apply that knowledge moving forward?
Oh, that's...
It turns your journal into a tool for growth, instead of self-criticism.
Yeah. That's a game changer. I'm going to try that. Okay, obstacle number 9 is staying in your comfort zone. And I think this one's especially relevant in our world today where everything's changing so fast. Why are we so drawn to what's familiar and comfortable, even when we know it might be limiting our growth?
Well, our comfort zones are, they're predictable.
Yeah.
And they feel safe. They give us a sense of control. But staying within those boundaries prevents us from really experiencing all that life has to offer.
It's true. I have noticed that when I do step outside of my comfort zone, even if it's for something small, I feel anxious.
Oh yeah, that's totally normal.
Really?
Yeah, our brains are kind of wired to perceive anything new or different as a potential threat. But the more we expose ourselves to new experiences, the more our brains actually adapt.
Okay.
And the anxiety starts to lessen.
So it's almost like we're training our brains.
Exactly. We're training our brains to embrace that discomfort.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, but if stepping outside of our comfort zone is so anxiety-provoking, how do we actually motivate ourselves to do it?
Well, like with most things, I think starting small is key.
Okay.
Just identify one little thing you can do each day that pushes you a little bit outside your comfort zone.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure. It could be something simple like trying new food or, striking up a conversation with a stranger, maybe taking a different route to work.
Oh, I like that.
Just little things.
Yeah, just little tiny steps to kind of stretch those boundaries.
Exactly.
All right, so the 10th obstacle that they talk about in this episode is criticizing yourself and others. And I think this one hits home in our culture today. Like, it feels like we're constantly bombarded with messages that tell us we're not good enough. Why are we so quick to judge both ourselves and other people?
I think a lot of it stems from a lack of self-acceptance. We project our own insecurities and judgments onto other people.
Oh.
It's like a way of deflecting attention from our own perceived flaws.
So it's not really about the other person. It's about us.
Exactly. It's about our own internal struggles.
That's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
So if criticism is really rooted in insecurity, how do we shift to a more compassionate and accepting perspective?
Well, I think it starts with cultivating self-compassion.
Okay.
Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to a close friend.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And challenge those negative judgments and focus on your strengths, your accomplishments, all the good stuff.
Like being our own best friend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that when we're more compassionate towards ourselves, it actually extends to our interactions with other people.
Oh, I like that.
We become less judgmental.
Right.
And more accepting of their imperfections.
So true. It's like, it's contagious.
It is. It creates this ripple effect of positivity.
Wow, that's a powerful message. It's like personal growth isn't just about improving ourselves. It's about creating a more compassionate world for everyone. Okay, so we've covered 10 obstacles so far.
Oh, yeah.
We've got 2 more to go.
Can't wait.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back with more insights into how to let go of what's holding you back from becoming your best self.
All right.
All right, welcome back. We are diving back into those 12 things we need to let go of to become our best selves. And, before the break, we were talking about some pretty heavy stuff like fear of failure and, those unhealthy relationships. And, of course, those pesky negative thoughts.
They can be so sneaky.
But we're not done yet.
No.
We've still got 2 more obstacles to talk about. And these are ones that I think so many people struggle with. And I know I definitely do.
Yeah, me too.
So let's jump into it. We're going to be talking about trying to please everyone and saying yes when you want to say no.
Okay.
Let's start with the people pleasing. why do we do it? Why are we so driven to make everyone happy, even when it's at the expense of our own well-being?
It's a deep-seated need, I think. It's a need for validation, a need for approval.
Oh, okay.
We're looking for that external affirmation to kind of boost our own sense of self-worth.
Oh.
And that can lead us to putting other people's needs before our own.
Yeah, I totally get that. I feel like for me, I always feel so guilty saying no. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like I'm letting people down or disappointing them. But I've also noticed that when I'm constantly putting everyone else first, I just end up feeling so resentful and burnt out. Does that happen to other people too?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
People pleasing can be exhausting.
Yeah.
It's like you're constantly giving, mm-hmm. and it's just not sustainable.
So how do we break free from that? It feels like it's so ingrained in us, especially for women, like we're taught to be nice and accommodating.
Yeah, you're right. It's definitely a societal thing. But I think the first step is recognizing that it's okay to prioritize your own well-being.
Okay.
It's not selfish to set boundaries.
All right.
No, it's actually an act of self-care. And it's important to remember that saying no to something doesn't mean you're a bad person.
It's interesting because I think a lot of us have been taught that saying no is rude or confrontational.
Right. But it's not about that.
Yeah.
It's really about self-respect.
Right. About honoring our limits.
Exactly. And when you look at it that way, it becomes empowering.
Okay, that's a good point. So how do we actually get better at saying no? Like, what are some practical tips for people who really struggle with this?
Well, first of all, just give yourself permission to say no.
Okay.
You don't owe anyone an explanation. And if it doesn't feel right, if it's not something you want to do, just politely decline.
Right.
Just say no.
I know, it's easier said than done.
I know. It can be really hard in the moment, especially if you're feeling pressured. One thing that might help is to buy yourself some time.
Oh, okay.
So instead of, immediately saying yes or no, you can just say, let me think about it and get back to you.
Oh, yeah.
That gives you a chance to, to really think about it and make a decision that feels good for you.
That is a great strategy. Okay, the final obstacle that they talk about is saying yes when you want to say no. Mm-hmm. Which, it feels like it goes hand in hand with people pleasing.
It does. Yeah.
Why do we do this?
Oh, yeah.
Why do we say yes to things that we don't actually want to do?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a lot of times it comes from a fear of conflict.
Oh.
Or, maybe we're afraid of disappointing other people. Mm-hmm. So we end up putting harmony above, being true to ourselves.
Right. I know I've been there. I've said yes to like social events or work projects, even, favors for friends.
Yeah.
All because I didn't want to seem like a bad person or rock the boat.
I get it.
But then I end up feeling so resentful and overwhelmed. Like, does that happen to other people?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Really?
When we're constantly overriding our own desires to please other people, it can lead to a lot of stress and anxiety.
Yeah, it's true.
Even physical symptoms sometimes.
Wow, it's like our bodies are trying to tell us something.
They are.
So how do we break free from that cycle? That cycle of saying yes when we want to say no?
I think it takes a lot of self-awareness.
Okay.
And you have to practice being assertive.
Assertive, okay.
Yeah. So start by really tuning into your body. Like, notice how you feel when someone asks you to do something. Do you feel like a knot in your stomach or a sense of dread? Those are signs that you might not really want to do it.
Oh, wow. That's a really good point. Our bodies are giving us signals.
They are. We just got to listen.
What about those situations, though, where you feel like you have to say yes? Mm-hmm. Like work commitments or family obligations. What do you do then?
Well, I think even in those situations, you have more options than you might realize.
Really?
You can always try to negotiate boundaries.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe delegate tasks, or even come up with a different solution that feels better for you.
So it's really about remembering that we have choices.
Exactly. We always have a choice.
Okay, so we've talked about all 12 obstacles now to letting go.
We did it.
This has been so insightful.
Yeah, it's amazing what we hang on to.
It is. I'm already feeling like I can let go of some of this stuff.
Me too.
But before we wrap up completely, I want to hear your final thoughts. Like, what's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to leave with today? Okay, so we're back and ready to, kind of wrap up our deep dive into letting go of those 12 things that might be holding us back.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. What really strikes me is, how connected all these 12 obstacles are. It's like they all feed into each other.
Yeah, it's true. It's like a web.
Yeah. Like fear of failure, that can totally lead to the negative self-talk, which then makes you procrastinate. And then, bam, you're a people pleaser.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle. And I think that's why it's so important to approach personal growth holistically.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, like when you address one obstacle, it can actually have a ripple effect. It can start to positively impact the others.
So it's not just about tackling each thing separately.
Right. It's about like understanding the bigger picture and working on shifting your mindset at a deeper level.
I get it. And one thing I'm taking away from all of this is that personal growth, it's a journey.
It really is. It's ongoing.
It's not about being perfect.
No, absolutely not. It's about learning and growing and just becoming more resilient.
Right. And more joyful.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to do this alone.
That's true. Having a support system is so important.
It is. Find people who believe in you, maybe a mentor or coach.
Yeah. Surround yourself with good people. Okay. So as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay.
What's one small step, just one, that you can take today, right now, to start letting go of something that's holding you back?
That's a good one. It could be anything, really. Like maybe a negative thought.
Yeah, or a bad habit.
Or even a relationship that isn't serving you anymore.
Yeah, whatever it is, remember that even the smallest step can make a big difference.
Absolutely.
It's about progress, not perfection, right?
Exactly.
And as you go on this journey of letting go, be patient with yourself and celebrate every win, no matter how small.
Love that.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've gotten some good insights and some practical tips to help you on your journey.
We'll see you next time.
And until then, keep letting go of what's holding you back and keep growing.